Welcome to Leadership Speaking Radio, the podcast for leaders and changemakers who want to learn how to communicate with impact, authenticity, and human connection to their peers, teams, and customers in order to build better relationships, better their bottom lines, and become better leaders. My name is Dr. Laura Penn. I'm the founder of the Leadership Speaking School, and I'm your host. Visit the website, theleadershipspeakingschool.com, in order to find out more about how we can support you to show up as the best version of yourself every time you speak. Now, let's get straight into our topic. Welcome back, everybody. Yes, here we are again. I'm so excited to continue to share this extraordinary work with you, to open up and to go into the work of the craft of leadership communication. And we are doing just that in this episode, which I am calling Content Creation Continued. This is episode number 51, and we are inside of season 5 now, folks, where I am going in with you into the craft elements of leadership communication. And FYI, these are coming from my newly published book, which is called Nowhere Left to Hide, Leadership Communication Skills That Every Leader of the Digital Age Must Know. And this book is available, of course, on Amazon, on any Amazon platform out there, as a Kindle. And right now I'm working on getting this book out for you as a book as well, and eventually as an Audible. But man, I am so excited to return to this work with you. And I hope that you've gotten some great value from our last episode, episode 50, which started this work out with the content creation bucket, as I called it. Well, we're going to go in more now and harvest. So just as a quick recap, and FYI, you should listen to episode 50 before you get into this episode so that you understand what we're doing and why. But a quick recap is that I took you through the red thread of leadership communication, which is that it's not about you, it's about your audience. These simple words create the foundation for the house that is leadership communication. And everything that happens with content creation and everything that happens with delivery performance stands on top of these words, that it's not about you, it's about your audience. And what we did last time was we went through some of the tools in the content creation bucket. And I want to continue with that harvest now. How about that? So get your pens out, get your thinking caps on. Let us enter the work. In previous episodes of this podcast, I have talked about something that will sound familiar to you when I say it now. To paint the picture, not just the frame. So for those of you who have heard other episodes, you'll know what this means. And this is a refresh for you about what those words are. And for those of you who haven't heard me say this before, here is what this is all about. So inside this content creation bucket, remember, this is what to say to your audience, whereas the delivery performance bucket is about how to say those things to your audience. So in the what to say, a big mistake, and I'll call it that with a capital M, that I see a lot of leaders and teams make in when they create their content is to lean back into what they always do, into their habits of how they create content, which is usually starting with PowerPoint slides and filling in that stuff on the slide and bringing in the pictures and the graphs and the words. And this is how they create content. Where the exercise that I want you to be doing, actually, is to create content first and then do the PowerPoint slides. Ooh, how about shaking that tree? So this thing about painting the picture and not painting the frame, it stands on top of that idea that you are creating content by writing it down, typing it out, or using a pen and a paper before you even get into the idea of doing the PowerPoint slide. And this for me is very similar to sewing. I love to sew. I sew clothes. I sew anything I can get my hands on to sew. And it's so interesting. A lot of people are like, oh, it must be so much fun to sew. Of course it's fun to sew, but that's the last part that you do. Like, so much of the work is the preparation and getting ready to put your textile into the machine and to press your foot down on that thing and to sew. That's the easy part that you do at the end. The hard part is getting everything ready, deciding what fabric you want, getting the pattern, drawing the pattern, cutting the pattern, pinning the pattern, trying the pattern. Like, all of this stuff happens. It's like 80-20. 80% is the work beforehand. 20% is the actual sewing. And in a funny way, that content creation kind of fits into this pattern, no pun intended, of, you have to do so much work to create this content to serve the needs and interests of your audience. That's kind of the work part. And then, of course, it's the work of rehearsing that and delivering it in a performance. But yeah, so painting the frame and not the picture is really doing this kind of grunt work first. And I wouldn't even call it grunt work. This is creative work. I love to say that, when you create a talk, you are creating a piece of art. It's never been done before. It's a brand new thing that you've made and brought into the world. And a mistake that I see leaders and teams make all the time, besides the PowerPoint thing that I've already talked about now, is they will, what I call, paint the frame and not paint the picture. So let's get visual. A frame, of course, has 4 sides, and it brings the picture into focus. It's what surrounds the picture, but it's also kind of in the metaphor that I'm using now, it's the facts, it's the data, it's the information, and it's the knowledge that people go for in their content creation. This becomes the content. This is the heart of everything that is produced for that talk. And then they make the PowerPoint slides with all that information in it. And man, I am so tired of saying the same thing over and over again, which is, hey, people who listen to your talk, they don't just want to see the frame. They're there to see the picture. And what this means in content creation is, yes, okay, the facts, the data, the statistics, and the information is important, but that's not what people are going to remember. You know me, I like to quote Maya Angelou in this moment, famous writer and poet, who said, people don't remember what you said. They don't remember what you did. They remember how you made them feel. And related to the picture that I'm talking about, this feeling is in the narrative of what you talk about in your content, not the frame around it. So here I want a delicious experience. Here I want details that are activating my senses of sight, sound, smell, and touch. Maybe even taste, if you do it right. Here I want to see colors and dimension and texture. Bring me into your world, is what I'm saying. And it's so interesting in all the work I've done around the world with leaders and teams from all over the world. It's so hard for many of them to go into this work because they're so used to just painting the frame. This becomes job speak. This is the way that it's done at work. But it's not good enough for the 21st century. To capture our attention, make us feel something. Don't just tell us what it is. Show us what it is. And you show us what it is by painting the picture and being generous with how you use your narrative. So that's the stop I want to make first in this episode of talking about the continuation of content creation. Paint the picture, not just the frame. I challenge you. In your next talk, whether it's a staff update or a TED Talk or a podcast episode or a town hall meeting, whatever you are doing, an online meeting, whatever that is, I challenge you to paint the picture this time. To not just sit back and rest into the habit of you creating that PowerPoint slide, and that's what you're going to talk to, And even worse, and I mean this when I say even worse, you've written down your keywords and you're going to say those words as you give your PowerPoint presentation. What are you doing? This is not using craft. This is using, whatever you can do to get it over with as fast as possible. And I understand, look, we're living in a busy world. Leaders and teams, you're busy. But if you want your content to matter, if you want it to stay in the room, then you've got to do the work that I'm talking about here, which is craft-based, and begin by painting that picture. Pour yourself into it. Get detailed, descriptive. Paint the picture. Let us see it. Let us smell it. Let us taste it. Let us feel what you are talking about. Try that out. That's my challenge to you. Let me take you on a journey now into the next element that I want to share with you in this episode about the continuation of content creation. And that is, of course, to play with your words. So it's one thing to, paint the picture. You're certainly playing with words there. But now I'm talking about intentionally playing with words. Really, really like losing it. Enjoying it. Putting different words together that sound good together. Making meaning. Creating rhythm and melody through words. It was Kristen Linklater, the voice of The Voice, the world authority. She passed away a few years ago, so the late Kristen Linklater, the world authority on freeing the voice, which is the title of her incredibly important book. Kristen Linklater said, "Your words are little energy parcels, and your job as a speaker is to open the parcel to reveal the meaning of the word." Poetry, isn't it? Yeah. So when I say play with words, I'm talking about what Kristen Linklater was saying, that you use different words and you reveal the meaning of these words and how you say them. So choose your words really carefully. Go all in. Experiment with how words sound when you say them. And enjoy the melody that comes out of your mouth when you say them. And enter that into your writing, in your content, because you need to be doing this. You need to be writing for the ear. You see, because your talk is going to be listened to, isn't it? It's not going to be read. You're not handing out documents, with your talk. You are speaking your talk. So when you speak your talk, you write for the ear. And the ear, our human ears are extraordinary. Our anatomy in there is so ancient and wired to pick up nuance and tone and pitch and rhythm. And this is where the words that you choose are so important, because that's what the ears will hear. Play with your words, write for the ear. That is the next element of this topic here today in our podcast episode that I want to share with you. To get really intentional about using words intentionally. Have fun with that. And get inspiration. I tell all my students to carry around with them a book, a really special book. A book that you've gone out and purchased, that you like the smell of, you like the feel of, you like writing in it. It's special to you. And I tell all my students, I say, capture language as you hear it. If somebody says, something extraordinary, write it down. If you read a word or hear a word that you haven't heard before, but you want to use it the next time you speak, write it down. I did this the other day. I was speaking to someone who hadn't heard the word audacious. I love that word. Audacious or audaciously, right? If you don't know what that word means, look it up. This is a word that you could use to spice up your language. By the way, if you use a word that you don't even know what it means, you have to define it for your audience so that they don't feel silly when they don't know the meaning. Anyway, so this word audacious was used, and she wrote it down. She's like, "Ooh, I want to use this word the next time I talk." And I was like, "Go for it." So this is what I mean. Capture vocabulary that touches you, and then use that vocabulary later on when you're creating your content. Look in this special book, and you'll have this wonderful place where you harvest words that you collect, like a word collector. So this is my next tool that I wanted to share with you, to write for the ear. And when you do, man, you will just bring your words to life, and those little energy parcels will open and reveal the meaning. So let's now move on to our last thought of the day for this podcast episode, which is to make your message stick by using poetic devices. Now, what does that mean? So this is similar to using special vocabulary and, picking up the wonderfulness, the loveliness of words. But we're going to get a little more specific here. Poetic devices, you all know what these are. You probably haven't used them for a while, and you probably haven't thought about the fact that you could use them in your speeches and your talks. But my invitation to you is that you should, because, again, you're writing for the ear. And poetic devices are designed to create sparkle in your ears. So what are they? A couple of my favorite examples. Repetition is a poetic device. Something that you say over and over and over again. You hear that rhythm? That creates a sound in your listeners' ears that makes them pay attention differently. So if you just said, repeat it over again versus repeat it over and over and over again, there's a difference in the quality of that sentence. So repetition for one word or a phrase is a really powerful poetic device that I recommend you using in your talks and in your speaking. Another poetic device is alliteration. This is where you have the same letter on more than two words. So a sentence that I use to illustrate this is, the hairy hippie held out his hand. Or you could also say, the hippie held out his hairy hand. Either way you say it, there are a lot of H's in there, and that ha sound creates the rhythm. Ha, 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 right? Alliteration, it creates rhythm, it creates movement in the words that you're saying and in the sentence, and it moves things forward. So I recommend using that as well. And then, of course, there is metaphor, my personal favorite. I'm a woman of metaphors. These are sentences or phrases that you create to create an image. His hair flowed like a silk scarf in the wind. Okay, I don't know, I just made that one up. It's really random. But you heard that image that I created. And it's a little bit like your brain switches hemispheres, right? You create a new meaning of something when you create a metaphor. So it goes from the left brain of the spatial words, side, and then you head over to the creative side, the right side of your brain, to imagine and to see that image come to life. And this creates a really deep level of learning and listening and understanding for your audiences. So this is metaphor. The more visuals that you can create for your audience's ears, the better. And finally, one more is onomatopoeia. Try to say that fast 3 times. I won't, because I know I'll stumble. This is another form of a poetic device. And this is where a word sounds like the thing that the word is describing, like the word pop or wham, right? These are the words that imitate the sound that they refer to. And this is really just fun. It wakes your audiences up. And the door slammed shut, right? Onomatopoeia. The popcorn popped. Onomatopoeia. So here's my big advice. Out of these 4 examples of poetic devices, I suggest you use one of each, or more if you want to get extra credit, one of each in every single talk that you give, using repetition, alliteration, metaphor, and onomatopoeia. Yeah. And not only that, write for your ears of your listeners. And of course, what I said at the very beginning, which is paint the picture, not just the frame. Bah. Now you are creating content that says pop, aren't you? Now you're making it come to life, people. And that's what we need more of. We need leaders and teams and change makers who can speak in a way that makes people wake up to what they're saying, who can speak in a way that is understood and felt by audiences on a visceral level. So that's what we're doing here. We're learning that craft. And this is a really powerful way for you to inject life force energy into any talk that you make. And my recommendation for you is to play now. Play with these ideas. In the next talk that you make, whatever it is, wherever it is, and whoever it's for, try one of these 3 new things. Yeah. Try painting the picture, not just the frame. Try using poetic devices, and try to write for the ear. For each one, just try one thing at a time. So in your next talk, maybe just try a metaphor and see how that goes. In the talk after that, try doing more to create the picture and less to create the frame. You see where this is going. So this is how you get good at it, by trying one thing at a time. And eventually, when you've done this enough, it becomes a part of your natural speaking repertoire. And this is just how you roll. This is your MO. But suffice it to say, guys, this is the fruit that we are harvesting today for this podcast episode. I hope that you've gotten your baskets full of things that you can now play with related to this craft. The more you do it, the better you get. And use every speaking opportunity to try out something new. That's where I want to end it. And I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed delivering it. Subscribe now to the Leadership Speaking Radio podcast to be sure not to miss an episode. And don't forget to visit the Leadership Speaking School at www.theleadershipspeakingschool.com to learn more about how we can support you to show up as the best version of yourself every time that you communicate to your peers, teams, and customers. So that's all for now. I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening, everybody.